We welcome you back here on the crowded booth. Bryce Koon alongside Palmer Thombs. Palmer not in the hunker down in Athens. Palmer, you are you're on the road. You were joking. You said you're about to get a lot of mileage on those suitcases this time of year.
Yeah, it's that time of the year. You spend a little bit of time at home with the family for the holidays, back down to Athens for signing day because you got to do your due diligence there, and then home for the holidays again, and hit the road for a bowl game, and back home for the holidays. So, yep, if you see me, you're gonna see me in one of two spots, and heck, throw in a third with the hotel down there in Miami. We're gonna get into all that, but yeah, it's a we were just discussing it is a busy, busy, busy time of year for guys like us.
Yeah, I was talking with someone the other day before we kind of get into this. I was like, look, football season's a ton of fun, but like December is the craziest portion, especially for a
Oh
guy
yeah.
like you that's been dealing with, conference title game, playoff game, and then a national title game. And even like on the LSU side of things. I mean, look, we've had a Heisman Trophy ceremony to cover, like you did last year, a
Yep.
Heisman Trophy winner for LSU this past year. So it's like everything comes into one. Obviously, portal recruiting, a ton of
And
fun, but yeah.
and then if your team doesn't make the playoff, the team that you cover doesn't make the playoff, it all gets sped up because,
Oh yeah.
instead of writing those draft decision stories in January, guys may be opting out. Guys may be, more guys are going to enter the transfer portal because they don't have to sit around and try to go win a ring. They want to go, find their next spot. So yeah, it's certainly been a chaotic time of year. We call it pre-write season, and we were just discussing both of us which ones we've got done.
Yeah, we can't quite spoil that, but it's a good reason for you to subscribe over at Dogs HQ. Palmer Tom's the beat writer over there, covering all things Georgia. And Palmer, look, if it's not enough of what's been happening with Georgia, I mean, you kind of look at the on the field stuff, but lately, and it kind of started on the 24/7 Sports side of things with Steve Wiltfong. Kind of as you know, you worked for 24/7 Sports, you know the power that Wiltfong wields when he drops these crystal balls. Dylan Raiola to Nebraska. And then I know, obviously, Rusty Manziel over your site followed up with some great intel, and your staff kind of walk me through when did you feel the winds start to change on this? And it obviously follows in with a guy like Brock Vandegrift entering the portal, which we talked about last time. All of this quarterback situation, but really Dylan Raiola, when did you kind of catch wind? Hey, this could actually kind of start to happen. And right now it kind of feels like it's really trending towards Raiola suiting up for the Cornhuskers next year.
Yeah, so Monday night is when it kind of started to go down, and I got a text from somebody saying, Raiola to Nebraska question mark, and I was like, no, come on, Well, I saw so and so putting it out on a board that just feels like a joke, and the more and more that you dove into it, the more and more that it seemed real, and as we're talking here now on Thursday, it's very real. It is very much so. Dylan Raiola looks like he is headed to be a Nebraska Cornhusker. Obviously, that's a school that has a lot of family ties to him. His dad, Dominic, played there. His uncle is on the coaching staff there. And they've been involved in this recruitment for a while. Dylan, a kid that, was once committed to Ohio State, backed off of that commitment, ends up going through the recruiting process again for a couple of months. Considered USC, considered Georgia, considered Nebraska, ultimately decides on the Dogs in May and moves his family to Buford. Bounces around a couple of different high schools and looked like he was going to have a little bit of an eligibility issue there in Arizona at his second Arizona stop. Moves across the country to a place where his family feels like they're going to be close to Georgia for Dylan to go visit and help recruit as the one of the top quarterbacks in the country and a huge cornerstone of this class of 2024, a group that's ranked number one in the country for Georgia, and B, for them to be close when he eventually enrolls there and is playing and suiting up between the hedges. Obviously, with the recent developments, it doesn't look like that's going to end up happening. And it's certainly been chaotic. I mean, there's plenty of rumors, and we're not going to get into all of that. Ultimately, what it comes down to right now is Dylan Raiola is committed to Georgia. Dylan Raiola is taking a visit to Nebraska this weekend, at the same weekend that guys like Ryan Puglisi and DeMello Jones and other members of the class of 2024 are going to be arriving in Athens and starting bowl practice with the Bulldogs. Same weekend that he was supposed to be doing that. Instead, now he's going to be in Lincoln, Nebraska on a visit. Looks like he's going to be headed there as they've backed out of the Kyle McCord stakes a little bit. Hey, good for Matt Rule, good for Nebraska to get a 5-star with some family ties to the Cornhuskers.
Yeah, changed up viewpoints once again on you, man. It's why we have to have Ralph. Ralph's busy making 175K a day, as our fan base jokes, with UPS during the Christmas season. Way more than Palmer and I are bringing home in our respective positions. That's for sure. Palmer, look, you talked about obviously the things that we don't really have to get into. Obviously, NIL, potential opportunity here. I think it's hilarious to see Matt Rule kind of come out and be pretty transparent with the media about what it cost. And then now at the forefront of one of the top quarterbacks in this class, man, it's just silly season. That's for sure. But when you look at this, like, if you're a Georgia fan and you're sitting at home, maybe you're, perusing the Dogs HQ boards, or maybe you're watching this episode or watching something over on y'all's channel, what's the level of concern? Because on one hand, look, Dylan Raiola is a nice talent. Like, and there's a concern that you brought him essentially to Buford. He was, less than an hour's drive away, it felt like, from the staff. Like, that's a concern level. But also, it feels like if Carson Beck stays, there's an assembly line still of quarterbacks. You still have Gunnar Stockton in the fold. You have Ryan Puglisi that we talked about. And you obviously, as you know, Georgia may be going to dip into the transfer portal here depending on what happens with Carson Beck. So what's your concern level if you're a Georgia fan sitting at home today?
0.
That'll be a gift, by the way.
it's 0. Because, ultimately, like you said, you have a potential top quarterback in the country coming back to school next year. Look, a decision has not been made there. If it has, I got to hop off.
Yeah.
But as of now, a decision has not been made. And Carson Beck is still weighing all options. I believe that he's going to be back in Athens. I believe it's best for him that he's back in Athens. And the intel that we've got says that he's likely going to be back in Athens. But until a decision is made, you have to consider all sorts of options. And so, if Carson Beck is back, he's going to be Georgia's starting quarterback, and you feel really good about the pieces that Georgia has. And, whether, no matter what pass catchers are around him, you feel like a quarterback like that, A, is going to elevate the play of those pass catchers, and B, pass catchers from the transfer portal are going to want to play with a guy like that. A potential, obviously, 2024 NFL draft, we're talking about Caleb Williams and Drake May as the top 2 quarterbacks. A guy that you cover in Jaden Daniels is pushing to be in that kind of a conversation. There's a lot of really talented quarterbacks in this draft. I don't know that you can say the same necessarily about next year's draft. There's not that guy that we're looking at it, years ahead of time and saying, hey, he's going to be the number 1 pick.
Yeah.
Carson Beck has a chance to put himself in that kind of a conversation if he comes back. If he decides to go pro, I think that he's in that second tier of quarterbacks behind those top 2 and maybe top 3 if you want to put Daniels in there as well. But if Daniels is in that second tier, how are you comparing Jaden Daniels and the season that he had and the career that he's had to Carson Beck? And, yes, the season that he had, a very successful one, but the traits that he has, the biggest thing that's going to be the biggest knock on Carson if he decides to go pro right now, it's experience. He will have started 13 or 14 games, depending on whether he plays in the Orange Bowl, which, again, all signs say that he's going to be playing in that game. And he's been participating in Georgia's practices here, the last couple of days as they begin preps for Florida State. So he's going to be in that kind of a conversation, and that's a knock that he has. That's a knock that he can control by coming back. And then it puts him, you're not going to be talking about experience or lack thereof with him next year if he's in the 2025 draft. You're going to be talking about all the good things that he has going for him, all the reasons that he is a fringe first round type guy already. it's take away that experience knock, and we could be talking about a fringe top 10 pick, of
Yeah.
potential number one pick. So I think it's best for Carson Beck to come back. It's obviously best for Georgia that Carson Beck comes back, but again, I said that there's zero concern regardless of where Georgia's at, because if he does decide to go pro, and we'll go down that trail now, Georgia is going to dive into the transfer portal market. Malik Murphy, Texas backup, who plans to enter the portal again. I have not seen an official entry into the portal for him yet, but he's a guy that Georgia has reportedly reached out to and expressed interest and said, hey, if this happens, we're interested. How does he weigh all those options? Is he going to wait around and see what potential opportunities are awaiting him, or is he going to go ahead and make a decision that's best for him in the moment? That remains to be seen. But it could be Malik Murphy. It could be another quarterback that enters the portal. Georgia's going to be an attractive place to play, guys, regardless of who is there, at the quarterback spot or not at the quarterback spot. Who is Brock Bowers going to be there? Probably not, but Georgia's still going to be an attractive place to play because of all the weapons and the talent that Kirby has been able to accumulate over the years. So, whether it's a transfer portal guy, Gunnar Stockton, Ryan Puglisi, they feel really good about this quarterback room regardless. And they feel really, really good about it if Carson Beck is going to be back.
The term competitor gets thrown around a lot, but I think that Georgia fans ought to admire Ryan Puglisi. I mean, look, this is a guy that knew Raiola was going to be probably coming on board, obviously. I think, too, even with that, stayed committed. And you don't want to say it's paid off because there's still a long way to go. But this is a guy who obviously the staff favors. They like what he has and the makeup that he has. And I think, too, and you correct me if I'm wrong because we just kind of talk about Puglisi here for a second. I think they like the fact that this is a kid that's just really a good athlete. Two-sport star up there, played a lot of baseball, obviously. Just a kid that I think understands the competition factor, which you don't see a lot. I won't say just understands it, but also embraces it, which you really don't see a ton. Look, that might change when he gets to college, but right now you feel pretty good about what you're bringing in.
I don't think it's going to change when he gets to college, just based off of the conversations and the things that I've heard out of him. And in a way, he reminds me a lot of Carson Beck because, that's a guy that in terms of the mental makeup of him, he's a guy that waited his opportunity, didn't care, as long as he was getting better, didn't care that he was going to be sitting on the bench. And, ultimately it did pay off for him in a starting position in his fourth season. And, maybe he goes pro, maybe he's back for a fifth year, whatever it may be. I think that you can safely say that decision has to stick it out and wait around and wait for his opportunity has paid off. Another comparison you could make between the two of them, elite baseball players, like you said. Carson was at one point a Florida baseball commit before he was an Alabama football commit and eventually a Georgia football player. But an elite baseball player there. With Ryan, he is very much an elite baseball player. And, NFL draft the MLB draft could come calling. He's not going to go play professional baseball, but some team may want to throw their hat in the ring and say, hey, this is out there. We're interested. And if you are ever interested in baseball, we're interested in you as a baseball player. So, ultimately, I think that the mental makeup is the biggest thing that stands out to me. And that, when he committed, he was told, hey, we are going to take two quarterbacks in this class. And I don't see that as a knock on Ryan. I see that more as an insurance policy because Georgia didn't know, and still doesn't know if Carson Beck is going to go pro after this season. And they didn't know what was going to end up happening with Gunnar Stockton and Brock Vandegrift. And so you have to kind of have that insurance policy. Now if Georgia ends up with one in the class, like it looks like they're going to, you maybe dip your toe in the transfer portal water. But again, I think that it says a lot about Ryan as a quarterback, that he, remained, he was cool with it. He was ready to roll. He was ready for the competition, wasn't going to back down. Again, and I think that another reason that you may have seen Georgia take two quarterbacks in that class is you're looking at a kid that plays, not the best competition in the world, and that's
Yeah.
always going to be a knock on a high school player,
Yeah.
especially at the quarterback spot. The talent in Connecticut is not what it is in Texas or Arizona or California or Florida or Georgia or Louisiana or wherever. There's just it's really hard to make that comparison. Now, I think we're gonna have a really good opportunity to see what Ryan Puglisi is made of. We got a good opportunity out at the Elite 11 event where he was very much in the mix with some of those top quarterbacks. But B, we're gonna have one at the All American Bowl in San Antonio. Um,
Hmm.
he just accepted an invite there. So I'm excited to see what he's going to do against some of the top competition across all positions at that event. And I think that ultimately he is a developmental prospect. But he's a guy that Georgia feels really excited about. I mean, and I would encourage fans to go watch this because it's one of the best interviews we've had. But Matt Godwin on our Bark After Dark show or Georgia show, whichever one he was on, he's been on both the programs. But former director of player personnel at Georgia, and he talked about when they were recruiting Ryan initially, they were scared that he was going to hurt somebody with how hard he was throwing it, and that the only comparison for arm talent that he's seen, from a high school kid, Caleb Williams. That one turned out pretty well for
Wow.
Caleb at the collegiate level, and looks like it's going to pay off at the professional draft level at least. So Georgia has thrown its hat into the fire with a lot of really good quarterbacks, and it looks like that they are going to end up with and they've talked to a lot of different ones throughout this class of 2024 with the goal of getting two. Looks like that they're only going to get one, but Ryan Puglisi is one that Georgia fans and this Georgia staff are really excited about.
As we talk quarterbacks, obviously you kind of mentioned it there. This game against Florida State, which has got a lot of drama surrounding it, mostly on the Knowles side. I know Georgia fans would like to be playing in the playoff, obviously, but didn't get that. You did a great piece right before the playoff came out of like why you felt like it deserved, and I think not only myself but our entire group of guys, Ralph and Will, kind of agree with that sentiment of the best four teams. It's hard to think that Georgia's not in there, but the fact of the matter is Georgia's going to be taking on Florida State down in the Orange Bowl. Palmer, I'll say this: a lot worse places you could be spending your New Year's, there at that time of the holidays than Miami, Florida. I mean, I think you're going to have a great time. You and I've talked about, the non-work schedule for you, and I think it's going to
Yeah.
be a good one. Just your way too early preview, maybe some things you're going to be watching for as the Knowles and the Dogs suit up, and what should be still a really, really fun game to watch.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at the two teams that are the first two out of the playoff, and you heard the ESPN guys on Selection Sunday saying, "Well, can we emergency expand this to six teams because we've got six that feel like they have a really strong case to be in the four, and the two of them are playing. So let's just
Yeah.
expand it to six." Now, I think that if everyone plays, we're looking at a really good game. I mean,
Mm.
there's a reason that those two teams, 13-0 Florida State, 12-1 Georgia, number 5 Florida State, number 6 Georgia. There's a reason that those teams are in that kind of a conversation with the college football playoff. They are not in the college football playoff. They're in the Orange Bowl instead, but there's a reason that every time you talk about Florida State and Georgia right now, you're still mentioning the college football playoff, even though
Yeah.
we're 2-3 weeks removed from Selection Sunday. I think that, with Georgia, we have not heard of any opt outs. We have not heard of any decisions being made about the bowl or the draft or whatever. So I think that the biggest thing is that we're all kind of in wait and see mode. Ultimately, it comes down to who's going to be out on the field. Florida State's talented defensive player, Jared Verse, not going to be out there. And I think that that's a disappointment for Georgia fans, and that wanted to see. Look, is Amarius Mims going to be playing in this game? If he is, that's a great opportunity for him
Yeah.
to boost his draft stock and go up against a guy like that. If he's not playing in this game, and you've got a true freshman in Monroe Freeling that could be asked to step into a starting spot next year, you'd love to see him play against a guy like that, and get thrown right into the fire. And so ultimately, I think it all comes down to who plays. The fact that we're getting closer and closer to this game and we still haven't heard, I think that's a good sign. Personally, to me, I think that I would expect this team and these guys to be participating in this game.
Mm.
Is it going to be the Georgia that we saw, for 13 games? I don't think it should be. I think it should be a mix of the Georgia that we saw for the 13 games of the 2023 season and the Georgia that we're expecting to see, here in 2024. I think that Kirby has talked about it. Mike Norvell talked about it. This is such a huge developmental opportunity. You hear all these college coaches saying when they make a
Yeah.
bowl game, the biggest thing that they're getting out of it, even if they're not in the college football playoff and competing for a championship, even more so probably, is an opportunity to develop your team for next year and
Those
get
15 extra practices. Yeah.
get a kick start for spring practice. And ultimately, so I did 2 pieces this week, 1 offense, 1 defense, but 5 guys that have the most to gain out of bowl practices. And it's a lot of young guys because as you look at it, there's probably about 20 guys that have on this Georgia roster that have NFL draft decisions to make. Not all 20 are going to go pro, but not all 20 are going to be back. And so ultimately, you're going to have guys, young guys, talented guys that are stepping into spots next year, and you want to see them start to do that now. Even with the transfer portal entries. I mean, a guy that I would point out right now would be Damon Wilson, 5-star, Georgia's highest rated signee from its last class in 2023. And they are looking to him for next year already because Marvin Jones Jr. has entered the transfer portal, and probably is going to end up at Florida State. That's an interesting side plot to this Orange Bowl. He's from down there in South Florida. But you're looking at a guy and the opportunity that a guy like Damon Wilson has to get those reps in practice, begin his, he's already begun his development. He spent a full season on campus, but begin stepping into that bigger role, and seeing what you've got in him. So, I think that's the exciting part of this bowl game to me, because it's not a meaningless bowl game. There is a lot of meaning to this game, with it being a matchup of 2 teams that are on the outside looking in, 2 teams, 2 programs, 2 giants in college football, as Kirby called them. You are excited about a matchup between Georgia and Florida State. It's not going to be the Georgia and Florida State matchup that we would have seen in the college football playoff, but it doesn't need to be that. And I think that that's part of the exciting part for this game, is that you're going to get a little bit of a glimpse of what a Georgia-Florida State matchup in the 2024 12-team playoff could look like. And a little bit of a glimpse of what what the future of these 2 teams could look like. And I think that's exciting. I'm also a little bit of a psycho, a freak. You can throw me in there with the just those college football crazies. I'm excited about this game. We had people on our board saying, "Oh, well, this is the regular season doesn't matter bowl." To me, whether it's the regular season doesn't matter bowl, the toilet bowl, the national championship, I'm excited to see what the future of Georgia football could look like, and I think that we're going to get a glimpse of that down in Miami.
Speaking of the future, Palmer, did you enjoy that 2-hour-long special last night? I'm just glad they showed all the games in the front end, and so I could get my written piece out of the way and then just move on.
I will say this: I got out of it. Georgia's schedule for the season got leaked last week, so that was nice. And B, it was Mom's birthday, so got out of it with that. Ultimately, had it recorded and came home and fast forwarded through it a little bit to get to just the highlights where they were talking about just Georgia. But yeah, 2 hours felt a little. I was when I pulled it up on the recording, I was like, 2 hours? 2 hours? How are they going to fill this? And
rolling out the red carpet, man. They're rolling out the red carpet for that new SEC ESPN deal.
Sure enough, they filled it out. They filled it out. They about and it was a lot about the future of college football. It was, and I think the SEC and its schedule for next season is a big part of that. Conference realignment, 12-team playoff. We don't need to get into all that. This is about Georgia and Florida State and Georgia's quarterbacks, and so we're not getting too big picture on y'all today.
Yeah, no, that's we'll save that. We have a whole off season to talk about what 2024
True.
hold. And I'll tell you one thing, you might not like conference realignment. We're all going to enjoy watching it though, because it's going to be a nuts 2024 schedule. Both on LSU's end. For some reason, LSU wanted to schedule 2 Power 5 teams out of some conference. So they're going to welcome UCLA and then go to Vegas, which you have fun in Miami. I'll have fun in Las Vegas next Labor Day weekend as LSU takes on USC. But hey, Palmer, appreciate you as always. I know y'all are probably running a great deal for the holidays. Let people know where they can find your work, and if they want to tune into some of the content that you guys are pushing out, whether it's behind that paywall or free for them, where do they need to head to?
Yeah, come check us out at dogshq.com, part of the On3 network, covering Georgia. Obviously, it's a busy time, like we talked about, transfer portal, recruiting, National Signing Day coming up in less than a week. And then, of course, the bowl game, the actual football that we all, love to watch between the lines. So come check out the work of myself, Rusty Mansell, Jake Rowe, Jake Roos, and Jeremy Johnson. We've got you covered on all aspects UGA. So just $1 for 1 month. Come check us out. Certainly an exciting time to be a part of the UGA community.
We appreciate our sponsor as well, Cook's Place, best scrambled dog in Columbus. Palmer, I don't know if you've ever had a scrambled dog. If you ever drive through Columbus, maybe going to an Auburn game again, you got to stop and get one. They're presenting sponsor of the Crowded Booth. We appreciate them as well. My name is Bryce Koon. He's Palmer Thombs, talking Georgia quarterback situation and a way too early preview of that bowl game against Florida State. We'll catch you next time here on the Crowded Booth.